Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Triangulation is brought to you by Cashfly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Triangulation, episode 252, recorded Monday, June 6th, 2016. Mitchell Waite. Triangulation is brought to you by CuriosityStream, a subscription streaming service that offers over 1,400 documentaries and nonfiction series from the world's best filmmakers. Get unlimited access, starting at just $2.99 a month. And for our audience, the first 2 months are completely free when you sign up at curiositystream.com/twit and use the offer code TWIT. And by PillPack, a full-service online pharmacy that combines modern technology, convenient packaging, and personalized service to make your life easier. Visit pillpack.com/twit to save $20 on vitamins and OTCs when you transfer your prescriptions. And by Texture, the mobile app that lets you access the world's most popular magazines anytime, anywhere, using your phone or tablet. For your free trial, visit texture.com/triangulation. It's time for Triangulation. This is going to be a fun show, folks. This is the show where we get together with some of the most interesting people in technology, and we get a chance to talk to them and pick their brains. We call it Triangulation because it's our guest, it's me, and it's you. You're the third leg of the stool. And join us in the chat room at irc.twit.tv to ask your questions of Mitchell Waite. This man is a legend in the business. How many of us grew up on Waite Group books teaching us how to do programming, how to use our Macs, how to use our PCs, how to play games? Mitch, welcome to Triangulation. It's
Thank
great
you.
to have you.
It's good to be here.
We've been having a lot of fun because Mitch and his friend Larry, who's an electrical engineer, brought a toy. This is an Apple I computer, and it's running. And Mitch typed the program in WAS Basic. Very, very cool. But we're going to go back a little farther. We're going to start before the Apple I with biofeedback. Here's the article from Popular Science, Alpha Brainwaves and Biofeedback Training. Was this your first introduction to technology back in December 1972?
This was my first introduction to what it would be like to not know anything about writing and have to write an article for a magazine.
And a big magazine,
and
too.
A very big magazine.
Yeah.
Because at the time, I hated English. I was going to school, and I couldn't spell very well.
Were you in college at the time?
I was in college, yeah. I just started Sonoma State. But I've been working on this biofeedback machine that let you listen to your brain waves. And the idea was that if you could learn to get your brain into the alpha state, which is a special state out of there's probably 50 different states your brain could be in, you could be in a meditative state. And I was very into Zazen at the time, and I was having a hard time meditating. I thought, well, maybe this is a way to do it.
It's so funny because people are still doing this, you understand, selling these headbands. And
Yeah, this was way before you. The only ones that were available back then were in the big UC Davis, UC San Francisco medical centers where you could go in and, the researchers were using them, and I couldn't afford one of those.
Now, this is Popular Electronics. Were you telling people how to build one of these?
Yeah, the first article was just, what are brainwaves and why would we want to get into meditation?
Right.
And the second part of this, the month later, was actually how do you build your own machine? And you remember, I was going to Sonoma State. I was living in a $60 a month room. I had absolutely no money. But I had built this, and it worked. And the publisher of the magazine said, well, we want to sell this thing in our magazine as a kit. And I said, oh, that's great. And he said, well, no, you have to supply the parts. And
I noticed they put their name on it, too.
I can't sell the parts. I'm going to school. I don't have a business. And they said, well, go find somebody that will sell them for you.
Wow.
It's a great opportunity. We have 1 million readers. And I said, okay. So I found a guy in Berkeley, brilliant math professor, Richard Hodges, who had a little medical electronics company. And I said, hey, would you be interested in selling this kit? I got the parts from Radio Shack. They're about, $40 worth of parts. And this magazine says, we might make some money. And he said, okay, maybe. And he looked at it and he said, well, I want you to change the circuit because I don't like your analog filters. They need to be digital filters. And I said, what's a digital filter? I didn't even know what those were.
Wow.
And he said, well, go sit in the corner, kid. Let me take over. So he redesigned the filter part of it. I mean, the whole thing worked already, but he made it much better. And I said, okay, well, thank you. And as I was leaving, he said, wait a minute, what do you want for this? And I said, I get something? He goes, yeah, you get a royalty. And I said, okay, great. And he said, well, what do you want? I said, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know anything about royalties. He said, why don't I give you $5 for each kit?
Sounds
I said,
good.
okay.
Yeah. So
And then
100, you got $500.
Yeah, and I thought, that's never going to happen. And I forgot completely about it. And 2 months later, I got home from school, and there was a letter from his company, and I opened it up and had a check for $5,000.
Wow.
And I went, this can't be right. And I called him. I said, Richard, what happened? He goes, we're selling these things like crazy.
That's rent for 8 years.
I said, well, I can leave school and like start a business or something, you know? And that was sort of the beginning of my career, I guess.
Isn't that interesting? Did they continue to sell that machine?
They sold for quite a while. I mean, they had to write a letter to the editor telling people, like, you know, we're going to get them to you. We're overwhelmed with orders. But I decided at that point, there must be a lot of people interested in this very unusual use of electronics.
Yeah.
There must be a lot of people like me that like all this stuff.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided to write this book.
Is this the first book?
This is the first book.
Wow. Look at this.
Projects in Sight, Sound, and Sensation.
And, of course, you weren't a publisher yet.
No, I was not even a writer. I mean, you know, I actually wrote this by longhand and had my mom type it in. Because we didn't have a computer back then. So she typed the whole thing for me. And the publisher said, you know, we don't know if there's a lot of people that are going to be interested in this weird stuff, because there were some funny things in there, you know, like a ESP machine, you know, and fractal generators and all kinds of stuff.
Look at this picture of Mitch back then in 1972. What a good-looking fella there.
Looks like a porn star.
Yeah. Well, everybody had mustaches like that back then. So this was actually electronics. You don't have an over-the-shoulder shot of this, Karsten? We've used up all our cameras for the Apple One. But this is cool because this has a lot of... Here's a Carillion device.
Carillion camera.
For auras,
So
right?
you could measure auras, and it worked. It really worked well.
Wow.
And there's some pictures of auras in there.
Remember, this is 1972. We were all hippies back then, right?
Yeah, this was so long ago that... So what happened was the book came out, and it was a flop.
What?
Yeah, very few people bought it, and I got pretty depressed, and I thought, wow, what did I do wrong? And I had to go get a regular job at the time, writing manuals. And while I was doing that, I thought, maybe I picked something that's not very ubiquitous. Maybe I needed to pick a subject that was more widespread. You know, that more people would be interested in. This was too narrow.
Yeah.
Because the people that bought this, that wrote to me, said they loved it. You know, do more. Yeah. But I wasn't going to do another one if it was going to sell so poorly.
You have to also understand that in 72, I mean, we had Heath kits. But really, most people were analog.
Yeah.
They were building analog devices.
People were building their own TVs with Heath
TVs,
kits.
Stereos, radios, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe ESP machines and Carillion auras were maybe a little
kind of out on the edge.
Out on the edge. So what was the next one?
Well, that's when I thought, okay, well, whatever I pick, it better be something that's going to grow like a weed.
Yeah.
And the company I worked for, I couldn't stand this company, but I had to get the job. They sent me to a seminar to a little memory chip company down in Silicon Valley, which I went to, and I came back, I felt like I had religion. And I went and told all the engineers, guess what? In a very near future, we're going to be programming our hardware, not designing it with chips. And they went, what? I go, yeah, we're going to use these things. They're called microprocessors.
This was a revolution.
And they said, go back in your little corner and write your manuals, kid.
Because all these things, you had to build each machine separately to do one thing. The idea of a general purpose machine.
They didn't even get it. I mean, they just did not get it.
And we had mainframes. Why wouldn't they understand?
They couldn't understand that you could, even if you had a mainframe, they couldn't understand how that could help some sort of hardware device be any better.
Right.
You know, leap of imagination.
Yeah.
I know Larry and I talked about it a lot when I was learning about these microprocessors. And I said, you know what, I got to write a book to these guys to explain what they are. Yeah. That's what's really missing. They don't understand how these chips are going to actually change the world of hardware.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided to write this book. If you ever have a problem, just write a book.
You brought everything. This is, oh man, I remember this. This was kind of legendary. The microcomputer primer. This was legendary because this was the first, I think the first book anybody saw that kind of explained how all this stuff worked.
And I wrote it with my friend Mike Pardee, who's no longer with us. And basically it was like written for the managers of this company I worked for, which were like old telephone farts that basically said, get out of here, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. And I wrote it so they could understand it and the engineers could understand it.
Now, you couldn't buy a microcomputer at this point, could you?
This was right on the edge of being able to buy a microprocessor trainer.
1976.
This was before the MITs.
Yeah, yeah.
This
So
was right at the same time as the MITs.
The MITs really blew it open because
MITs
then
started
you could
the whole
order
thing.
a kit like a Heath kit,
That's
but it
right.
would be a computer. In fact, I was telling you that in 1976, my friend Eric Schwartz, my college buddy, was building one. It must have been a MITS because all we knew is he said, "Yeah, I'm building a computer."
It could have been the Mark IV from Radio Electronics.
There was another one.
There was one before the MITs, but they
Yeah.
didn't get the same popularity that the Altair got.
And we thought, "What are you building a computer in your dorm room? What are you nuts?"
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You might as well build a car in your dorm room. That doesn't make any sense at all. But of course, it was that MITS article in Popular Electronics.
Popular Electronics, yeah.
That woke Bill Gates up one morning at Harvard, and he went, "Oh!" And he calls Paul Allen, and he says, "Quick, we got to get in on this. They must need a BASIC."
Exactly.
And really, this is the beginning of the revolution.
And that's when he quit school.
He quit school. He left.
That was a smart move because you couldn't do much with the Altair at that time.
Yeah.
Because
They needed it.
there was no software.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning of the hobbyist revolution, I'd call it.
This book, this is really a piece of history.
And that book was a huge success for me. And I finally
bet.
started making some money, and I thought,
Yeah.
whoa, maybe this writing thing, you don't have to be poor all the time as a writer.
I love the choice that Bobbs and Merrill made on the typeface. That's the computer.
Oh, the old computer
electronic
font.
font.
Yeah. And what do they have? An EEPROM programmer on the cover. I thought I'd try to make it look like a single board,
Ooh,
like a
wow.
computer in a suitcase, but it's actually a PROM programmer.
And some hippie doing the programming.
Well, that was the other thing I did differently is I decided to use cartoons. So I hired a
That was smart.
cartoonist.
Yeah.
And this
That-
cartoonist was really, really good.
Personalized it. Yeah.
And it made it more friendly, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Look at
I
this.
showed, like first it was the pictures about what are computers like and and then the back of it was catalogs of all the microprocessor chips that were coming out.
Look at these.
So there's like a whole section in there
So
about
in a way, this is the manifesto that started a revolution. I mean, this really is at the very beginning.
That's flattering. I don't know if I was that far
Well,
with it, but it was
Yeah.
it was the beginning of at least engineers understanding it and scientific people and math
but that's
people.
how it starts with a little ripple of understanding, and then people kind of get it, and they say, I want one of this is the key. This
And
is
the engineer
big
tells
thing.
their friends or the
Yeah.
kids, and the kids say, hey, my dad built a computer.
Right.
Well, what does he do with it?
Right.
Well, that's what we thought,
Doesn't matter.
maybe we need to explain to people at a lower level, like what you could do with these. So that's when I wrote this book. It's like
You're like Bill Atkinson. You brought your show and tell. I love this. Oh, wow. What year is this?
I think that was, look at the spine. I think that there's a date on the spine.
With Mitch Pardee.
Say 77?
Your Own Computer. I'll have to look at
That
the,
thing that sold almost 1 million copies. That was the thing.
1977. So that was the next year.
Yeah, and that's when I really got on the
Same
map.
guy, by the way.
Yeah, we just went crazy with the cartoons at that point because this was for everybody to read.
But this is a little bit of a fantasy world of the mom and pop and the kids sitting around the computer game, or I don't know what they're doing there, balancing the checkbook, food, $30.
And they're on a Lear terminal, not on a personal computer.
Because there isn't a personal computer.
Well, I think the Apple had just come out in 76. So there was an Apple I. And, so I did talk about what you would actually, computer would be teaching you, like on the left.
It's funny because Sam's became a big computer book
Sam's went from
publisher.
the RTL, TTL stuff
Yeah.
to the computer. And I remember those guys saying to me, we're not sure about these microprocessors thing. We don't
It's not
think they're
gonna
going to
take
do
off.
that.
This can't go anywhere.
I mean, why would anybody want to program a computer? Come on.
You have a cartoon of the fellow visiting a computer store. There can't have been very many computer stores at the time.
There was like one in San Rafael.
The Byte Shop.
The Byte Shop.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. You strolled into a Byte Shop around about that time, and you picked up this. And this is, I am so thrilled to see this piece of history. And not only is it a bit of history, it's running. That is the board, very famously, that Steve and Woz made, the Apple I board. So were you a member of the Homebrew Computer
Yeah, I was a
Club?
member of the Homebrew Computer Club, and I was going. And all they were talking about was the Altair derivatives, what they call the S100 bus. Remember
Right.
that? And
Yep.
CPM,
Yep.
which was
That
before
was the
DOS.
operating system. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the precursor to DOS, and it was all about guys showing you how to build things for your S100 computer. So there were all
The
these
SAW.
boards. The SAW was a good example. Lee Feldenstein was the god of
Yep.
the S100 bus. And that's all people talked about. It's like, well, I just built a card reader. I just built the audio output board. And then one day, the two Steves walked in and they said, hey, we're building a single board computer. And we're like, oh, really? You could do that? Yeah, we're using this new chip called the 6502.
Here it is right here. It's this silver.
And we were like,
right there.
what's the 6502? Well, instead of costing $150 like a 8080, this one's only $25.
It's kind of a junky chip, let's face it, but it was cheap.
It was cheap, and Woz could not afford the $150 chip.
Right.
Which is amazing when you think about that. So we said, okay, well, bring it in one day when you got it working. They came in like a couple weeks later, and we did it. Here it is. They gave us a demo, and people's jaws fell out. How did you get all that into this little board?
But that was Woz, wasn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
he was a genius.
Woz was just so far ahead of his time. I still think he's a genius beyond most people's imagination. Because what he got this thing to do was with so few chips, he got it to do so much. I mean, it's replacing this box that's, maybe weighs 50 pounds, has 14 boards in it, a gigantic power supply, all these little switches on the front. He gets it with this one board, this one keyboard, and your little video terminal, and you've got a whole computer.
Well, that was the key. You could use a TV set.
You could use a TV set. That was a big breakthrough.
Because nobody wanted to buy that big terminal that you show on the front here. Nobody really wanted this.
Nobody could afford it.
So what did you say that was? This monitor, this terminal here?
This is just
on the front of the book. No, the front of the book here.
It was a Lear-Sigler
that's
monitor. I don't know what. I think it was
probably
a terminal that connected.
$1,000, and you needed a mainframe on the other end.
That's right. You need a mini computer or a mainframe. So when he did that,
so this is a huge breakthrough. Your TV set can be doing something, and it didn't really matter what you were doing. It was a processor. It was memory.
This is the Babbage machine.
Yeah.
Of our generation.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
The first.
The
we're going
very
to take
first.
a break. I want to talk a little more about this and about your career, and we're going to talk about birding too. So, if you're a birder, you know the name Mitch Waite, and you know the name iBird. It is the dominant application for bird watchers, and it's on the iPhone
And the Android.
and Android, and that's going
Windows.
to be important for you. And you have a Windows version too. Windows Phone version?
No, not Windows Phone.
Let's not go crazy.
Let's not go there. I'd sell two.
We'll have more with Mitch and more about the Apple One and not just the history but the future of computing in just a little bit. Our show today brought to you by Curiosity Stream. I know you're curious. If you're watching this show, you love to learn. You're interested in life out there. Who was it? It was Kevin Kelly we had on last week. Actually, his interview is going to show up next week. So you should absolutely watch this. We recorded ahead of time because of WWDC next Monday. And I'll explain that whole thing. But he said, I don't watch TV, I watch documentaries. And that's a good use of your time. And here's a source of great documentaries. It was started by John Hendricks, who started Discovery Communications, the Discovery Channel. There is so much content, 1,400 hours, 1,400 titles, 600 hours of content. Unlike a lot of the streaming solutions that we use, this is available worldwide, 196 countries. That's pretty much everywhere. You can watch it on the web, of course, but there's a Roku app, there's Android, iOS, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Amazon Kindle, there's an Apple TV app. This is, again, Curiosity Stream. And 50 hours of 4K content. It's one of the largest 4K libraries on the internet, so if you're getting a new TV, stay tuned because I have a great offer for you. You get Stephen Hawking's Universe. That's a series where Stephen traces the history of astronomical theories and technology. See, we like to learn. There's Michio Kaku. We love him. His show Next World talks about future, virtual reality, artificial intelligence. Our friend Rick Smolin, who's also been on this show, has his show, The Human Face of Big Data, is on there. The Road to the Singularity with Jason Silva. There's so much good stuff. They have monthly plans, they have annual plans, and it's very affordable, less than a cup of coffee, or the cost of one title on your other software. $2.99 a month, $2.99 a month. But if you do this right now, you're going to get 2 months free. 2 months free with curiositystream.com/twit. But you have to use the offer code TWIT. That's 60 days to watch some of the most interesting programming. If you like what you're seeing on Triangulation, you're going to love Curiosity Stream. curiositystream.com/twit. The offer code, TWIT, will give you 2 months free. That is actually a really generous offer. I'm really thrilled about that. Thank you, Curiosity Stream. Mitchell Waite is our guest. The Waite Group was one of the great computer book publishers for many years. We talked about the Bibles, the big, thick Bibles. He has brought a toy that is significant in the history of computing. And by the way, these are very rare. How many Apple Ones are there?
Well, there's somewhere between 200 and 250 that were made. We know that Apple bought back or took back 100 because they had a trade-in. You know, trade in your Apple One, we'll give you an Apple II. And so
those were off the market.
Those are gone. So there might be, I think the last time I looked, there was like 60 or so that were in existence, but only 19 that are actually working that we know of.
This is one of 19 in the world that works. And by the way, non-trivial to get this working, right? I mean, it wasn't working when you pulled it out of your garage. Did you have it in the garage? You're the original owner, right?
Yeah, no, I had it on my wall, and I actually lived on a houseboat next to the Corte Madera Creek, so it was a little dirty. When I took it off, 40 years on the wall, it can get a little dirty.
But I can see why you framed it and put it on the wall. I have a 2FX framed down the hall.
Okay.
Same thing. It's beautiful. It's a work of art, and it's a piece of history.
And people look at it and go, what is that? And it's like a little note. I said, I bought this from Steve Jobs, you know.
So tell me the story of buying it.
Well, you know, I met Steve at the Homebrew Computer Club, and I told him I was writing books, and I was working on one called Computer Graphics Primer, which I actually have here, too.
I love it. You got all the books.
This book.
This is awesome.
And I was going to write about computer graphics, and I wanted to base it on the Apple One. And he said, no, don't do that. And I was like, why not? He says, we got something much better coming out. And I said, okay, but I mean, I've done a lot with the Apple One already. And he said, what? I said, well, I built a weather station, and I've got it on my houseboat, and it measures the height of the tide with ultrasonics and the wind speed and the sun. And he said, oh, I want to see it. So he actually came up to my house, crawled on the top of my roof, and he said, this is okay, this is cool, but don't write the book around that Apple One. And I said, why not? He says, it's a piece of junk. And, you know, so even back then, he had a little bit of a tude going on.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, well, Steve, that hurts. I mean, it's not a tude.
It's not junk.
It's not a turd. It's like you know. He said, no, I like your weather station, but this thing, nobody can keep it running. It's too hard to work on. So we're replacing it with this new thing called the Apple II. And I said, oh, that sounds cool. And he said, yeah, we'll come down to Cupertino, and I'll give you one. And I said, what's in Cupertino? He said, well, I'm starting a company called Apple.
Well, he hadn't started it yet.
He just started it. So
you remember seeing him at the Homebrew Computer Club?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We saw him a lot.
Yeah.
And it was hard for me. He was 10 years younger than me, so it was a little hard for me to take him seriously at first.
Right.
But once I saw this in the bite shop and realized that he was very serious and that he was going to build a new one because he knew this was hard to keep running, I started to get a lot of respect for him.
This was a big deal because he basically had started the company around this particular board.
That's right.
He went to the owner of the bite shop and said, if I could have these, could I sell these here? And the guy said, no, unless they're pre-built.
Right.
I want a complete board. I'm not going to sell people parts.
Right.
And Jobs, without knowing he could do it, without having the parts, said, no problem. How many would you take? Then went home and made some frantic calls. And
got it all on credit.
Got it all on credit.
Because he did not have the $50,000.
Because he didn't have 50 grand. They had sold, Steve's VW bus and Woz's HP calculator to raise the money to make this. So he had to call all these suppliers and say, I'm not a 21-year-old kid. I'm
a man.
I'm a man, and I'm going to make this. But he talked him into it. And this is what they built in the garage, right? This is the thing that very famously they sat there and
they had all their friends working on it in the garage.
Dan Kottke, who's been on this show also. I bet you if Dan looked at this, he might even recognize it. Spent a little time soldering chips onto that thing.
Dan knows a lot about this. He's actually helped people in apple fritters get their Apple Ones to work.
Yeah.
So he knows a lot about it.
So you took it down off the wall. You carefully cleaned it, I imagine, right?
We decided not to clean it because we were told by one of the gurus on apple fritter, you don't want to clean it. You want to keep it as realistic as it was when it was made.
You don't want it shiny.
Because that's not the way they looked anyway. They were kind of dull looking.
Yeah.
So, you know, don't replace the old parts with new parts. Get the old parts to work.
It's just like a classic car.
Exactly like a classic car.
You don't want to put, a new engine in a classic vet.
No. You want as original as you can.
So this is original equipment.
Everything here is original. Except for the chip I had to replace, that the pin broke.
One chip?
One chip had a broken pin, and we tried to solder we were unable to get the pin, so Larry actually got a dentist drill out and drilled a hole in the chip and inserted his own little pin and got it somehow connected to the chip.
So even that chip is the original chip with just a little bit of fixing.
That's right.
Nice job. You must have very steady hands. Holy cow. And these chips, I remember these. These would work themselves out one of the reasons these were unreliable is with the expansion and contraction of heating and cooling, the chips would start to walk out of the board.
Yeah, well, they were in sockets too, which was
There's
another
nothing
thing.
holding them in there.
No one does sockets anymore because they're too unreliable.
Yeah.
But so he said to me, why don't you come down to Cupertino and we'll give you Apple II. I said, okay. So I went down there and I met Wozniak, and I actually brought this with me. And I said, look, I need a way to connect into the peripheral interface adapter, the PIA.
Because they didn't provide you with anything.
Yeah,
I mean,
he had an I/O chip made for people like me, like hobbyists, and this whole breadboard area up here was for putting your old parts in. So he actually soldered up, wired this thing up for me so I could use the PIA, and then he showed me how to use it. He was a very generous man, Wozniak.
Woz still is, isn't
He still is. He's a really lovable guy.
Yeah.
Then Jobs said to me,
Here's a picture you probably will remember.
oh my
Look at the V-dub
Wow.
in front of the Bite Shop computer store.
Wow.
This is it. This is, I mean, there
Well
are not a
started.
bunch of these around the country. This is it. This is the one.
Is that the one in San Rafael?
I don't know. I don't know, but it's a California plate, so it must be, right? Look at that.
But, you know,
So you stroll in and you say, here's $666.66.
well, I had to save some money up. It took
Yeah,
me
it's
a
a
while.
lot of money.
There was a lot of money back then. But when I got down to Bandley Way, where Apple was, Steve said, I have an offer for you. And I'm like, oh, okay. He said, you know, I like your books, and I've got a job offer. And I said, really? Doing what? He goes, I want you to write the manuals for Apple.
Nice.
And I said, nice. That sounds really good. And
Look inside. Here's inside the Bite Shop.
what's that, a T-shirt there in the middle?
T-shirt says the Bite Shop. Look at it. It's a computer.
Oh.
The IEEE Computer Society. Are you a computer professional? 20,000 members of the IEEE. Join them. Created by man. The affordable computer. That, by the way, looks like an Apple II right
Those
there.
are not replacement bucket capacitors. Those are original capacitors.
Oh
They're
yes. By the way,
capacitors.
we're looking. Okay, let's go back to the motherboard because the chat
Those
room is
blue
dissing
things.
those capacitors.
They are real. No, they did not leak. They're still very reliable. They're high quality
It's kind of
springs.
amazing, actually.
It is amazing. No, none of those
40
capacitors. Have been,
years.
there was one broken capacitor? There was.
There was one bypass capacitor that's broken.
One
Okay.
bypass capacitor broke. Is that the little red ones or
Those little brown ones.
These little brown
brownish
discs,
red?
these
Yeah,
little things here.
Yeah.
But we salvaged it. We managed to reconnect the wire.
Yeah. it
So
was
this is
broken.
all original.
Yeah, like this wiring right up down here,
Yeah.
that came from them. They wired that. And that was so you could decide whether you wanted a 6502 or a 6800 as your
Oh.
microprocessor.
Oh, you could
So
jumper it.
You could jumper it. You could change it to a different microprocessor.
I wonder if anybody did that. The 6800 much more expensive, I'm sure.
But I'd like to finish the story about
Yes.
the job offer.
So he says you can write for us.
You can write for us, and I'll give you founder stock, and you'll be a millionaire.
Oh,
And I was like, wow.
by the way, that was very ambitious what he just said there.
But there were already people working there, and I knew that the Apple II was very cool.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, but just one thing. I said, you know, I live in Marin County on a houseboat, and I love nature and the redwoods, and could I come in a little later? Because it's a long commute. And he said, what? And I said, you know, come in like an hour later. He said, hey, take a look around this office and tell me what you see. And I said, bunch of nerds at their desk. And he said, look under the desk. I said, what is that? He goes, those are sleeping bags. We don't go home.
Oh,
You're going to
boy.
live here. You can go home and take a shower, but we're here 24/7. You can't come in late.
Oh, boy.
And I said, oh, brother, man, I don't know if I could. Steve, I don't think I could do that. And he said, well, if you don't do that, you're such a bozo. You'll never get an offer like this in your life. So I actually
By
turned
the
him
way,
down.
he kind of was right. In hindsight,
I think I did okay.
that stock would have been worth something, though.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
I
you
ended
did
up.
fine. It's not like you're, living on a house.
But I didn't have to work for anybody. I got to work for myself.
Yeah.
And I just felt
Yeah.
at the time that I liked him. I thought he was actually a really cool guy. But I thought he was kind of a tyrant, and I didn't want to work for a tyrant.
Yeah, and you probably were right. I think the people who worked for him did have to just bite their tongues and
Well, look what happened to Dan Kotke.
yeah.
mean, boy, did
that's
he get
very sad.
screwed.
That's a very sad story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't get caught up in that. He might have
Yeah.
said, well, technical writers don't get stock. We decided
Probably
that,
wouldn't. He
you
said
know?
engineers only get stock.
Yeah,
right?
so I would have been out all that $1 million
Probably
he
wouldn't have
promised
gotten
me.
that stock. Yeah. Yeah.
But I saw that he was onto something with this Apple II. It was so much better. It was so much easier to use. It started right up in BASIC. It was like, okay, I'm going to write the book about the Apple II.
So this Apple One, far from starting right up in BASIC, We have. This is earlier because we didn't want to do this on the show because we didn't know how well it would work. But we'll roll in the. This is Mitch entering in. So narrate because we're going to see that we're going to see the video of this, but narrate what you did. So you turn on the computer, and what does it give you? Does it say nothing?
A little asterisk that says it must have worked because it showed you that asterisk. So something's working.
Something's working. And then what?
Then you have to use a cassette tape to load in BASIC, the programming language BASIC.
Is there any? There's some code in firmware.
There's a monitor, but it doesn't do anything. Except let you look at memory locations, write into memory locations in hexadecimal.
And jump to memory locations.
And jump to memory locations. So it's a monitor. They call that a monitor.
Yeah.
But it's all in assembly language.
That's the M in CPM, is control program /
monitor. Exactly. That's very good, Leo.
Yeah. I got
You were there.
It was somewhere. It was stuck in there. So it was a very simple system that allowed you to load in the operating system.
If you knew,
the firmware.
65.2 assembly language, you could type in some code.
So you could actually, in the monitor, you could type in some assembly.
In hex.
Yeah, with peaks and pokes, basically. And,
equivalent of peaks and pokes. That's right.
There weren't peaks and pokes, but the equivalent.
But, you'd be typing a long time.
So you'd have a cassette player. Was it just a regular cassette player?
A regular cassette player. It wasn't, anything special.
And on cassette, were they selling?
I think you had to order the cassette tape with BASIC on it. It was a separate, just like the cassette tape interface, which is the little board that's sticking up.
That's the daughter board.
That's the daughter board.
So what you've done here, which is very cool, is you have an MP3 player where you had the audio. Because by the way, that's an audio interface. It's not a digital interface.
Yeah, it's analog.
It goes. It's
good.
Right? Pretty good, huh?
That's very good.
That was BASIC. That was just.
What program did you just load?
That was a checkbook program from Compute. So that's what it sounds like. So it's audio, and the board is actually getting analog audio input
and converting it to digital and putting it into memory.
Holy cow!
So
kind of like a modem.
Yeah.
And so by the way, that's a very tenuous process for reading and writing.
It takes a little while.
Once in a while.
And it only works once in a while.
So you'd loaded it a few times. You actually have to say.
First, I have to start the monitor.
Start the monitor.
Then I have to go to the location where the tape loads its actual date of 2.
And to your credit, all of this is in your head. You remembered this.
Well, it's only like 4 numbers, so it wasn't that bad.
E000.
Fits my age. These guys know all about it. Look.
Oh, yeah. We got some apple fritter guys in there.
They're giving the URL for where to download the tape.
You can get the audio online?
Yeah.
So somebody's MP3'd the cassette.
Someone has MP3'd everything that was made for the Apple one.
Oh, my
So you can actually download, the checkbook program. We've got 6 or so different programs on this tape, on this MP3 player.
Wow.
And then basically you start the tape and you press return and you hope that it's going to load. And if it doesn't, you do the whole thing over again. And I think we got it in 3 tries.
The audio is actually on archive.org, which is kind of cool. They've actually saved. Here's Apple Enhanced Checkers. Can you hear the audio coming out of this? You got some apple fritter guys in there.
They're giving the URL for where
That's
to download the
definitely
tape.
not it.
No, that's the head. Let it run.
Mitch is playing.
Oh, that's the head tone. So a tone runs to tell the.
Download, the checkbook.
And it does sound like a modem, doesn't it? This is bits and bytes.
Yep, there it is. Sounds like a
Coming
lot of
over.
noise.
Does sound like a modem.
And then
And so
it's 300 baud. Press return and you hope
you
that-
still have our audio coming from the video that we're running. So and then you press return and it runs.
Yeah, so I can write a program.
And so now you've got WOZ. It's called WOZ Basic.
WOZ, W-O-Z Basic.
So WOZ wrote the original Basic software.
And you could type it in by hand.
Yeah. No, that's Karsten. He's got the audio up from the video or something like that.
Some other video running out.
Oh, it's coming out of Mitch's computer?
Oh,
All right.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that's the actual.
There's something else.
Oh,
So certainly close our stream. You don't want to have that playing
is it
on
this
your
program?
It sounded like our stream.
It was our stream. Close our stream.
Oh, me?
Yeah, he's got our stream
Oh,
open.
okay,
I can see it right there.
Well, I wanted to be able to chat.
Oh, no, you don't need the stream to chat. Just
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm out of the
You
stream.
got the chat room open there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That stays there.
Trip down memory lane.
So here is the. And if you were an Apple One and you heard that, you'd say, "Oh, checkers! Yeah, I remember that." And you don't need to show the video of this, but we're covering all this with you doing this, entering it in, and now you got basic, and the basic prompt is just a greater than.
Yeah.
And you can start typing in basic code, and
So
Actually, what
10
you're doing right now is writing a new program.
Yeah. It's
So,
a very sophisticated program, by the way. This is complicated. I mean, back then, this was a lot. To get a computer to do this was just...
It was impressive.
It was a big step.
This is why Gates said that the MITs needed BASIC. BASIC was a very empowering technology because without it, the end user really can't do anything. If you can write assembly, I guess you could do
But
that.
how many people could do that?
Right.
That was a tough language.
Right. So this was a very empowering thing. And of course, a whole slew of magazines. He's going to run it. There you go. A little marketing. And look at that. That's just run forever until you break out of it.
It blows up
Or until
for
it
some
blows
reason.
up.
Gets too hot, or someone kicks it.
So are you gonna auction this this board off?
Yeah, I would like to see this appear at some museum where people could experience it. So yeah, I'll probably put it in some auction. Or
It might be worth quite a bit. I know that an Apple One sold for $850,000.
the last one went to the Ford Museum.
That wasn't just the board, right? That was a wooden case, and
But it didn't come with a wooden case.
this was all something that somebody added. This is what Apple.
This is the
sold.
original. What you get is what you see.
Yeah.
No, what you see is what you get.
$666.
And I have a copy of the manual.
You do, which you did not write.
No, I Xeroxed it.
No, but I'm saying you didn't have to write it.
No, I didn't have to write it. Lucky me.
Because you didn't take that job. That is just so cool. I'm so glad you brought this along. What a fun thing to have, the original Apple.
I just wonder how many people understand how far ahead of the time this was when it first came out. I mean, that's the one point I want to get across, that this was such a step beyond anything we've ever done. Because it was the first where you could, pretty much home computer. I mean, I wouldn't call it an iPhone, but it was as revolutionary as the iPhone.
Absolutely.
Don't you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You called it the Babbage machine of the personal computer era. It really was our first.
What did that make Steve? What did that make Steve Wozniak? Was he
Ada Lovelace?
I was kind of wondering. So maybe he should have called his girl like Ada instead of whatever.
Lisa. Really, really cool. So we'll stay in touch, and you can let us know when the auction goes up.
Thank you.
I love showing this partly because of us old timers who look at it and go, "Oh wow," and do appreciate it. But I think it's important for young people who have smartphones and they have computers and they're everywhere to see that this was only 40 years ago. This has come so far in such a short period of time. And to see where it all began, I think is just great. This is an Apple II keyboard. It doesn't come with a keyboard. You have to have a kind of primitive keyboard.
You had to get your own
work with
teletype
this.
keyboard.
Yeah.
And this was 4,000 bytes. Now compare that to the memory in your iPhone. That's 4 billion bytes.
Wow.
So, do the math. 1,000 billion.
Yeah. And as this thing is running all out to print this on the screen, and it's going fairly slowly. I mean, if you had an internet connection running at that speed, you'd be very, very unhappy.
You'd be very unhappy.
Yeah. We'll have more with Mitchell Waite. We'll talk about birding. We'll talk about books. Anything you want to talk about, too, join us at irc.twit.tv. Our show today brought to you by PillPack. I love this idea. Here's an example of technology. The internet technology, image recognition, combining to take a business that's been around for hundreds of years and reinvent it. I'm talking about the pharmacy. And, this building that we're in for 60 years was Tuttle's Drugs. This was an old pharmacy. In fact, our conference room is where the pharmacist was. And so it hasn't changed much in 60 years until now. This is a better way, a better pharmacy at pillpack.com. It's a full-service pharmacy that's online. You could talk to a pharmacist 24/7. So that right there, you don't have to have those embarrassing conversations in public with the pharmacist. You could talk to them anytime. Got a question about what medications you're taking, interactions, symptoms, how to take it, just call. And then one of the best parts about PillPack is how they deliver your medications. Of course, they come by mail. Shipping is free. It's all included. Most insurance policies will pay for everything. You just pay your deductible, your copay. It comes in these great PillPack boxes with the name, your name on it, the dates, images of the medications that you're taking, the name, the dose, the prescriber, the quantity, and then dosing instructions. That's all on the back of the box right there. In the box, the actual pills. And they come in these very easy to use pouches with exactly the information. Like, this is my 8 p.m. Medication, the day, the date, what's in it. You look on the back, it's clear, it's see-through. You can see exactly the pills. And that's important because that's how the imaging machine checks and the pharmacist double checks to make sure you get exactly the right medication. And you never have to wonder, did I take my 8 p.m. meds? You know exactly, if you forget, you'll know. If you remembered, you won't have to do it twice. And man, is this easy for travel. You just take off the packs you need, throw them in your carry-on, and you're ready to go. I love this. Compatible with most major insurance plans, most forms of Medicare Part D. The service is free. You just pay the copay. Call them right now or visit pillpack.com/twit and transfer your medications over. As a little thank you, you'll get a credit for $20 worth of vitamins or over-the-counter medications just for doing that. Pillpack, PILLPACK.com/TWIT. Reinventing the pharmacy. Just yet another way that technology is changing our lives at PillPack. Mitch Waite is our guest. For years, I knew him as one of the preeminent computer book publishers. The Waite Group published everything, including the Mac Bible, right? That was yours. And this was the book.
This is the next big one after the last one I showed you.
If
This is the next big step.
this was, oh yeah,
Started
of
getting real
course.
serious about BASIC.
And and you can. This is nice. So you're working with Howard Sams as an imprint, the Waite Group imprint.
I just then talked them into letting me put the Waite Group at the top, and they said, "Okay, we don't know why you want to do that, but okay." And I said, I think it's a good idea. I think people will get, eventually learn to recognize that name.
Sure.
So that was that one.
Yep.
Then, actually, this one came out before that.
Primer. Soul of CPM. Oh, now we're talking.
I wonder how many in the chat room remember CPM.
PIP.
It goes way back.
I remember PIP. Instead of
PIP.
copy, you used PIP.
Yeah, that's right.
Peripheral Interchange Program.
Interchange program.
Crazy stuff. But
This was
again,
going inside of CPM and using the API calls, which
wow,
gave you a lot of power.
The shield instruction. Wow.
This was a pretty popular book.
I always bought books like this because you wanted to know, where do you poke in memory?
What's
to
behind
do
the
this?
covers?
What's going on
Underneath the sheets.
Yeah, I always enjoyed this kind of stuff, and your books were really good for that stuff. Did you learn all this stuff yourself?
I had to learn all that stuff. That was written by Robert LaFleur, whose picture's on the back. He's turned out to be the best author in the whole world ever. Robert wrote so many great books. He was a wonderful author. He made all the things fun. He taught me how to use CPM like you could really use it. But this is about the time when I started to think, maybe there's more nerds out there than most people realize.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a market for these programming books.
What are you talking, 1,000, 5,000, 50,000? I mean...
How many copies?
Yeah, I mean, how big is this market?
A successful book like that was 50,000 copies.
50,000. Yeah, that's a big market.
Back then, that was a lot of people. And it was sort of an unknown market. So, the publishers would always say, what is the CPM and why do we want to publish this?
Yeah, it's the same for us. It's foreign language programming. For He's like, what? No one understands this, but yes, they do, and they want it. And the thing is, there's a thirst, especially in this era, in the 70s and 80s, and even into the 90s, because there wasn't any information. You had to either go to a user group, you had to buy a book. You really had to learn for yourself. There was no education. There was no
classes.
No classes. And even if Motorola made a manual, it wasn't something a human could read. So you get somebody like Robert to read the Motorola documentation.
That was the opportunity that you could take these really nerdy manuals and make them a success for yourself.
Yeah, make them human scale.
Now, the next big step was when I realized that this was still too hard, this semi-language programming for CPM.
Yeah.
And I heard about this new language that was called C. And I went to the publisher, and they said, we don't really think this is a good idea. I'm like, why not? Well, this is too hard. Who's going to want to... BASIC we can understand. This C is way too hard.
Really?
And I had to go back to Indianapolis and, pound on those people before they would buy the idea of doing a book on C, which turned out to be their biggest selling programming book ever.
I remember this one. This is one I own. The C Primer Plus, user-friendly guide to the C programming language.
And, at the time, people were going, what is this C? It doesn't make any sense. And,
well, you buy Kernighan and Ritchie, which is about
what good
this
is that?
thick, and you go, well, now what? Now what? Where do I go from here?
And the way I got this written was because at this point there was too many books to write, and I could not write them all. I couldn't find. So I went to my old college professors at College of Marin and asked them if they would help me write these books. And they were like, why would we do that? And you can make some money on these things called royalties.
Yeah.
And I was able to sign up Steve Prada, who turned out to be a very quiet guy. You would never guess what a great writer he was. And Don Martin, who talked a lot and taught physics, but he wasn't as good a writer as Steve. And
Is that how it often went? Is you'd have the geek and then you'd have the interpreter?
that's kind of like the two Steves. They kind of fit. They worked together.
Yeah.
They were both physicists, but Don was the guy that ran the department and did all the talking.
Yeah.
And the Steve Prada was just a genius astronomer.
Yeah.
That had this hidden talent. He didn't even know he could write this well. And when it came out, Don was going, God, I couldn't write this book. I had to have Steve write most of it. I wrote a couple of chapters, mostly at Steve. And Steve bought 2 houses with that book.
Nice. So this is the heyday now. We're talking the 80s and
yeah, this is the 80s.
This is when computer book publishing took off, and magazines too, right? I mean, this is when Bill Ziff
the Waite magazine
sold the boating magazine and said, I'm going to do computer magazines only. Of course, Byte and IDG, they all sprang up.
Ziff Davis Press.
Yep.
And at the time, I remember thinking, you know what, I'm going to make Waite Group Press or Waite Group Publishing at the time. I wasn't really a publishing company. I was just a writers group. I want to make it do things that are really on the cutting edge. I want to be on the edge. So one of the teachers that used C Primer Plus in the school in Canada called me up and he said, hey, listen, I've written this program that actually uses the computer to teach you C.
No.
And I was like, how'd you do that? And he goes, well, I've been working with a big team and we're thinking maybe we should publish this.
Right.
And when I said, okay, well, you mean like a version of C Primer Plus that uses the computer? And he goes, yeah, and it works on, PCs. I said, fabulous. And
This is pre-internet, remember?
This was pre-internet.
Yeah.
And he sent me the program, and it was amazing. It worked so well. It knew when you made a mistake and sent you back to what you didn't understand,
Nice.
which was the key. So then
And by the way, pre-CDs as well.
That's right. And so I went to the
CD-ROMs.
publisher, and I said, I got this great idea for a book that's mostly not going to be a book. It's going to be discs. It's going to have a lot of floppy
Was this
disks.
the first book to have discs in the book?
It wasn't the first, but it was the first that... actually, this is an interesting story. They basically turned me down. They said, look, we've tried this disc thing in the back of books.
Nobody wants this.
No, people want it, but they steal the discs and don't buy the book.
They go to the bookstore and they steal it.
Yeah, and he said, we're not going to do it anymore because we can't keep the...
Right.
And I said, but I think you're short-sighted. I think the people will want the book because this book is like all about the program.
Yeah.
It's the manual. It's everything you need.
And it's a software, yeah.
And they said, Mitch, we've liked all your ideas so far, but we don't think this is a very good one. And I was pissed. And at the time, I was thinking, there's got to be a way I can get this done. And Barry Richmond, who was running Osborne McGraw-Hill in Berkeley, said, why don't you publish it yourself? And I said, what do you mean, like publish it, like print them? He goes, yeah. And I said, oh, that's too expensive. I can't afford that. He goes, if this is really successful, you'll make 10 times more than you would as a writer.
Right, of course.
And I said, yeah, but don't I have to own the inventory? And he goes, yeah, but if it sells well, you'll sell the inventory out.
Right.
And I went, oh, well, I don't know how to do this by myself. I said, I'm not a publisher. He goes, become a publisher. Go to
That
this.
was amazing advice because he's essentially setting up a competitor. I mean, that's
Well, this
really...
was this. Yeah, he was. That's a good point. He was setting up a competitor, but something interesting happened with Barry. So I said, well, I need a sales department. I need a production department. He said, there's a distributor in Berkeley called Publishers Group West who represents small publishing companies. Go to them, tell them what you have. They have their own sales department. You'll have to print it, and you'll have to do the production, but they'll sell it for you. And they have a bunch of publishers that they represent right now. They can't afford a sales department.
Right.
So I went to them, and they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I have this idea for a computer in a book. It's called
Here, let me see.
computer program. It's called Master C.
Oh, look at that cover.
And they were like,
That's awesome.
well, yeah, and I hired the guy to paint that, too.
That's
It's
awesome.
an original painting.
Look, 5.25-inch discs included.
And, I went and met with the guys at Publishers Group West, and they said,
How did you solve the thievery problem?
I didn't. We
Oh,
decided that it was okay to let people steal
It
it.
was worth it.
It was worth it because it got
You
the
know
word
what?
out.
And then you don't get the book, and so you really want the book, so you go back and buy the book.
And, the amount of people that stole it was like less than 2%.
Yeah, of course it is.
So it's like a small number. They said, well, look, we like this idea, but we just don't want a one-off publisher. We want a program of books being published. So you've got to come up with a whole series of books. And I said, dude, I'm just starting here. I don't want to do a whole bunch. And they said, well, do 2. And then next year, if they're successful, do 4. And do a binary, keep
Right.
doubling it. So I came up with one other book, which I didn't bring with me, on Word Perfect, because that was big hot
Oh,
subject
yeah,
at the
Word
time.
Perfect, sure.
And so
Sure.
then I was worried about, what about all my publishers? What are they going to think if I do this? So I had to go to all of them and say, look, I'm going to publish this book, but don't get scared. I'm still going to write
Don't
books
worry.
for you.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry.
And I promise not to do any books that are on the same, that are going to compete.
Fair enough.
I use my words carefully. They are not going to compete with what I've done for you.
Right.
Now, you would think that was limiting, but actually that was really easy because, there was DOS 1.0 and then there was DOS 2.0. So I wouldn't
doesn't compete?
Doesn't compete with 1.0.
No. Right.
So,
How do they feel about that?
it was interesting. They actually still wanted more books from me.
Interesting.
Yeah, they just...
The magazine business was cutthroat. Ziff Davis and IDG.
Do you know about that?
Well, I worked for Ziff Davis for a few years, so I remember very well that even though we were colleagues and there was some crossing of the lines, we didn't like each other very much.
They didn't treat you well.
It was seen as a zero-sum game. That PC Magazine and Windows, whatever was it called, Windows Magazine, aren't going to both succeed. One will and one won't. And so it was very competitive. I think that maybe the book industry wasn't so
The book
cutthroat.
industry was like, out of every 5 books that you publish, one might be successful.
It was kind of hit-driven.
You need one hit to make it work.
Yeah.
And I was delivering more hits than most people, so they
Right.
liked me.
Look at all these from the Waite Group. The Waite Group's Microsoft C Bible. The Bible was a good idea, man, because then you got a book that had everything. The Turbo C Bible. Thank you, Philippe Kahn.
Remember Philippe Kahn?
Oh, could forget.
We took
I've been
a lot
trying
of-
to get him on the show.
Is he still around?
Oh, yeah. He's a sailor now.
Really?
He is an avid sailor.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, of course, is he still around? I don't know if people know this. Philippe Kahn, who started Borland International, he was
Turbo
a
C.
Frenchman. He came to America, and he made a very fast Pascal program at first, right? Turbo
Right.
Pascal and then Turbo C. And everybody who used Pascal or C before remembers going out and getting a cup of coffee while the program compiled. This thing would do it lickety-split.
Interpreter.
It was boom. And so was very successful. And they stumbled and later had some trouble. But Philippe had a really good idea. His kid was being born. And he said, it would be so cool if I could take a picture of the baby on my camera phone, and this was in the early days when they were just really primitive, before smartphones, and have it sent out to all my relatives. He invented and patented the technology that is still used in every smartphone today. And then he invented the accelerometer that's used in every Fitbit and so he's doing okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know this.
He's doing okay. He's Motion X, which owns the patents and all the IP for
Interesting.
the motion detectors in pretty much everything.
Wow.
So he created the camera phone industry, and then he created.
So he made an annuity for himself.
Yeah, he's doing all right. I don't know if Turbo Pascal's still selling, but I doubt anybody's buying the Master C book either, right?
No, I don't think so.
There's a shelf life to
You
these.
need DOS to run it.
All right, bring us a DOS computer from the basement. Let's see. We have a few, How fun. How fun is that?
So after that, I started going really out on the edge. Fractal Creations.
Oh, now, see, this is going back to your hippie roots.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
definitely my hippie roots, but
Yeah.
that was a very successful book.
People love this stuff.
People didn't know what fractals were, but
Right.
they, so this was a great education, and then there was a fractal generator on it.
Oh, so this also came with
Came with
software.
yeah, I realized at that point, this came with 3D glasses. It was like, you can put everything you want in a
We
book.
do have a DOS computer here. Here's our Toshiba.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
John's going to bring it in.
Jeez.
It boots.
Don't put my discs in there, please.
No, I won't. I promise. This one's never been opened. This is like, you could sell this.
That's vintage.
This is vintage. Stop before you open this package. So you learned how to do this. So you learned how to publish these, how to put the discs in, how to do the whole thing.
Yeah.
And you made quite a business for yourself, I think.
I did, yeah. It was a nice business.
Yeah.
It was, and we had a niche. We were able to create these books that nobody thought of. So I think that's one of the reasons that Simon & Schuster decided to buy the company, because they couldn't think of these ideas.
Right.
And
And like Bill Ziff, I think your timing might have been good, because
it was good timing.
the PC book market has
It died a year after I sold my company.
Holy
died.
cow.
I couldn't have gotten 10 cents for my business. And you were there. I remember. There was that crash when there were so many books published.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact year.
It's crazy.
It's like 1990 something.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like nobody wanted to publish any computer books.
Yeah. That business has died. It really has.
It's
In fact,
now it's like the concrete business.
You were telling me that you talked to Andrew Lamoth. Let's show this Andrew Lamoth book, because this is really where the Waite Group became famous. Was these 800-pound, like everything you'd ever want to know. In this case, the black art of 3D game programming.
You know, those titles got us in trouble. I mean, when we first published Bible, boy, did we get in trouble. People were saying,
I thought it was sacrilege.
Oh, yeah. All the Bible belters started writing letters to us. You can't use that word on a book,
The size
a computer
of this
book.
thing.
That was like a weapon. You could throw that at
This
someone and
thing
really
is
hurt them.
more than 1,000 pages. But I was told this by our publisher's Q. Thick books sell better. People don't want to buy a simple little tome. They want everything.
Before the Dummies books, this was the standard that the heavier the book, the more money you'd make.
Right. The Dummies books, did they kill the business ultimately?
They basically reset it, I think.
They brought it back briefly.
They brought it back, and they showed there was another genre that you could sell into. that
Really,
was
really simple stuff.
very, very simple.
And probably aimed at an older generation that was new to technology and liked books.
And intimidated by it.
And intimidated. And the book was the easiest entry point
And
for
dummy
them.
became a nice word. Calling yourself a dummy was actually
Boy,
a compliment,
I thought they
right?
were nuts.
I thought they were nuts, too. How could anybody buy something with dummy on the title?
Why would you do that?
You know,
You're
what's next?
insulting your audience.
What's next? The Idiot's Guide? And the
Yes,
Idiot's Guide,
the
that was
Idiot's
next.
Yeah, I think
We were going to do a series called, CPM for dweebs. And, no, that's not going to work. Who knows what a dweeb is?
Anyway, I remember when the show began, you were talking to Andrew Lamothe, and you said, don't write another book. He still wants to write these.
Well, he's finally getting it just now. I mean, finally realizing that maybe books aren't the way to go.
Yeah.
But that's like, 30 years later.
It's a lot of work, and if you took the amount of money you made and divided it by the number of hours you spent, it's below minimum wage.
Oh, it's way below minimum. And plus, it's a lot of dead trees.
Yeah, there's no need for this anymore.
You don't need, you don't need atoms. You
Yeah.
need electrons.
You know, it's funny, and I guess I've now become a collector in a way because I still buy computer books, but a lot of times it's like Paul Graham's Lisp book. It's like the classics of the genre.
You're just not going to let go.
Hacker's Delight, stuff like that. I love these old kind of classic books, and they still read quite well, although something very sad is happening. They're being reissued in very poor quality. They look like you see
Like it's on toilet paper.
It's toilet paper. The print itself is jagged, as if they scanned it and then photo reproduced
Well,
it.
that's, and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but I remember when we were at one of the book fairs, and the guys from India came to us and said, "Oh, we'd like to publish your books." And I was like, "Okay, well, what can you afford? Because we're getting like $100,000 for this book from Japan.
Right.
Well, we could pay you at least 30 rupees."
Yeah,
And I'm
nothing.
like, "Rupees? What's that?" And
Yeah, nothing.
the thing was, people told me, you know what? If they don't get the rights to it, they're going to do it anyway.
Anyway,
And that's kind of what's happening right now.
yeah, I have a feeling. And yet, it's keeping some of the old classics still in print. I mean, that Paul Graham Lisp book is I think it's called On Common Lisp, is a classic, and it's wonderful to have. But it's if they weren't publishing the cheap version, I don't know if we'd. I'm not looking at my watch; it keeps ringing. These smart watches. I see you're wearing an Apple Watch. Doesn't that drive you crazy?
Turn the sound off.
Drives me crazy. Why? It's too smart. I don't want it.
Mine just displays little butterflies.
I like your butterfly. We're going to talk about birds.
Oh, right,
In just
birds.
a bit. Mitchell Waite is our guest. The Waite Group, one of the legendary computer book
we have
publishing
to
companies.
mention this.
What? Okay, one more.
Okay.
One more.
So,
So he's brought. As long as you brought him, we got to show him.
anybody know about Google Cardboard?
Oh, this is actually fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, Google made a big splash a couple of years ago at Google I/O. They didn't hand out any real valuable hardware, but at the end of the show, if you look under your seat, there was this cardboard kit. And I remember Gina Trapani putting it together on her way up here to do This Week in Google, and it was Google Cardboard. And of course, Google Cardboard has introduced now, I think they've made more than 1 million of them. I think it was 4 million was the number. Wow. It's introduced VR and immersive video to the widest number of people because all you need is a smartphone. You put it in there, and you can. The New York Times included it with its Sunday Times. But guess what? Google didn't invent it. This guy did. He's putting his cardboard together. Here, give me the book, and I'll show you the book first. When was this?
Look on the spine.
I have to look inside. I think either my eyes aren't good enough for. But this is called the Waite Group's Virtual Reality Creations. Dave Stamp, Bernie Roll, John Egan, and it was published in 1993. So we're still Windows 3.1 days here on this. And by the way, speaking of Windows 3.1, you get your own floppy disk. But what's this thing in here? You get your own
Cardboard.
This is the virtual
your
reality
glasses.
visor. Look at that.
Right. This used Fresnel lenses, and I can't remember how to fold this thing together. It's got little letters to tell you where to put the things, but I'm not going to bother
This
with
is
that.
cardboard.
But this is cardboard before cardboard.
It has a stereo Fresnel viewer in it, and I guess you'd have images on your computer screen.
On your computer screen, that were two images that would blend together and have 3 dimensions to them, just like virtual reality.
Wow.
More than 3 dimensions. You could actually move your head around, and you'd see different angles, and you'd be able to look at the
Now,
thing.
it's not merely a guess that Google was inspired by this. They came to you.
Well, they called me up, and they said, we heard you might have this book. Could you have any copies of it? And so I sent them a bunch. They were very happy.
That's how
And I
interesting.
said, do I get my name on the cardboard?
If the progenitor of cardboard, and it really is pretty much the same thing.
It's very similar.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't
The
have...
difference is instead of looking at a computer screen, you're doing stereo vision on your
On your
phone, which is
iPhone.
embedded in the
Yeah.
visor.
I mean,
But that's
if someone had told me back then, by the way, someday people will be putting their little phone in front of this, I would have laughed.
I know.
That would have been
I
like,
know. Crazy, right?
phone?
Oh, and by the way, it'll be 1440 resolution.
You mean a princess phone? How do you
What?
put that on your head?
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
See.
So,
It goes into-
what goes around comes around. We actually were talking before the show
Yeah.
about virtual reality. This was everything we're doing today we were doing in 1991.
And it's all on a cycle, right?
Yeah.
What cycle are we in right now
It's
on
just gotten
virtual
cheaper
reality?
and more widely available.
It's higher
Mitch, give it up.
resolution.
You're never going to get that thing together. He's still trying to assemble it. Meanwhile, you're still seeing iBird flying by
Jeez,
on
it's
the
still
Apple
running.
II. It's still Apple One. It's still running. You know what? You're a good programmer. There's no memory leaks. There's no flaws. No divide by zero. No
Yeah.
bounds.
I have good error checking.
Yeah. Yeah. That's because you didn't write it in C. We'll take a break and we'll come back and talk about birding because this is going to be my new hobby, I think.
I'm so glad to hear that.
I think so. I
You
wear a
would
bow-
make the perfect birder.
Don't I kind of look like a birder?
You do.
With a bow tie?
Yeah. You could have been in the Big Year. You could have been Steve Martin in the Big Year.
Steve told me that he listened to our podcast. He was stuck in Vancouver shooting that. He said that was the only thing that saved my life shooting that movie was I was listening to your podcast at the end of the day.
Oh, is that right?
So thank you, Steve, and thank you for introducing us to birding. And we're going to talk to the king of birders in just a second. But first, a word from Texture. I am thrilled about this. Computer books gone. The internet replaced them. But newspapers not doing so hot. But you know what's still hot and still going great, and there's still great work being done? Magazines. Every month there is at least one article I have to read in Vanity Fair, The New Yorker, Wired magazine, Rolling Stone, right? But if I went out and bought each one of those magazines every month, not only would it cost me hundreds of dollars, but my coffee table would be groaning under the weight. I would feel guilty. You could subscribe. That's even worse. Here's what you do. You get Texture. It's kind of like Netflix for magazines. Binge read magazines, hundreds of the world's best magazines, one low monthly rate. You get the magazine on your iPad or your iPhone or your Android device, and you can read it at your leisure. You pick your favorite magazines. They'll download automatically. So when you're up in the air in an airplane, even if you don't have internet access, you get the magazine. It's the whole magazine, too, by the way. Every page of the newsstand edition. But there's bonus features you can't get in print, like video. They have curated collections by their editorial staff, so if you don't know what you want to read, they've got great ideas for you. Their top stories and new and noteworthy sections in the app will really help. And look at the magazines. I mean, everything. A photo essay in National Geographic. Keep up with what's going on between Gwen Stefani and that other guy in People magazine. I have to admit, occasionally I'll read the gossip. Time, Vogue, for the fashion. See, I probably would never buy Vogue, but I have to say, having it in Texture means that I will actually look through it, and it's kind of fun. Consumer Reports, get all the reviews before you buy it, and this is all for one low, flat fee. Now, I want you to try it, so we've got a free trial for you, so you get a sense of this. By the way, you can share this with your family, too. So Lisa has our Texture subscription on her iPad, and I have it on mine, too. And so that way we can both read the magazines we want to read. Popular Science. It goes on and on and on. All the best magazines. Visit texture.com/triangulation. And you're not going to pay $10 a month. You're going to get it for free. A free trial, so you can really get a sense of what it's like. But I got to tell you, instead of buying even just one or two magazines, this is so much more affordable. You don't just get the current editions. You get back issues, too. My grandma used to have, her whole basement was filled with old National Geographics. She could have had texture. It would all fit on one iPad. I'll tell you, texture.com/triangulation. Try it free today. Our guest today on Triangulation, this is so much fun, is Mitch Waite, whose career spans everything from the earliest days of personal computing to today, because he has a best-selling iOS app as well. And an app that we've talked about before. I'm not a birder, but when you talk to birders, iBird, in fact, in My Big Year, didn't Jack Black use iBird?
Exactly. He learned about how to bird from iBird.
So how did you get, are you a birder?
I am a birder. I'm not as radical, as serious a birder as most birders are, but I've been interested in birds since I was a kid. I used to collect birds' eggs when I was a child, all the way up to high school, really, just because I was fascinated by the birds. And the eggs were like little jewels.
Yeah.
And we would get the nest, and we had this huge collection, And I used to paint birds.
Birds are beautiful. Of course, the Audubon images are...
They're magical.
Incredible. But they're also fascinating biologically, because they're essentially the descendants of dinosaurs.
That's what the science thinks today. That they
So
came.
that's fascinating.
Yeah, and how did dinosaurs develop feathers? That's the big question. Where did those come from? They think maybe that it was a new form of insulation. For the smaller dinosaurs, when they were up in trees, they could stay warmer, and that feathers did a better job.
Better than fur.
Better than fur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's bird song. Every bird has a unique signature, except the mockingbird, which does them all, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We have a mockingbird. Why is it mockingbirds like to sing at 3 in the morning? What's the story with that?
I think they know that it wakes us up.
He's so jolly. Everybody else, including all the other birds, are fast asleep.
Yeah, what's their survival instinct in singing it that early in the morning?
And he's like, man, it's like a symphony out there.
And it sounds like it's like 14 different birds.
So I guess I am kind of interested in birds, and I noticed the crows. And I think when you hear birdsong in the morning, there is a wonderful feeling you get, isn't
Makes
there?
you happy.
It makes you happy.
Makes you smile.
It makes you feel like you're in nature, and it's so much better than hearing traffic noise, is to hear the birds sing.
And you kind of wonder, why did birds decide to sing? They could have done a lot of, they could have barked, they could have done so many things.
Well, some birds do bark.
And some birds quack, and some birds bark, some birds hoot, some birds scream.
Tell me about, so how did you come upon, first of all, was this the first app that you
No,
did?
this was not the first app. I had the first app in my pocket. It's very small.
Yeah.
This is the first app right here.
Oh, it's a little cartridge for, what is that, for...
A Windows mobile phone. So the first app we developed...
an SD card, and it
was-
says, what bird... And this, by the way, is still the website, whatbird.com.
This was the first app that we developed.
Winged Explorer.
Winged Explorer. We developed it for the Windows mobile phone, which at the time was the iPhone of the age.
Yeah.
Do you remember Windows Mobile?
Oh, yeah, I had one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there's some pictures of it on the back there. And that was...
Look at that.
Yeah, and that's when I had the idea that, well, maybe, the book... I mean, I'd be up on Mount Tam trying to identify a bird.
Well, people are carrying around Peterson's Guide, right?
Yeah, or National Geographic or Sylvie. And when you opened the book, by the time you got it to near the page where the bird might be, he was gone.
That bird has flown.
And I happened to have a Palm Pilot in my pocket, and I thought, I wonder if you could... And that's when we decided to see if we could develop this. And unfortunately, one thing I learned at the time was that trying to develop for Windows Mobile was really hard.
Yeah.
The programmer said it would take 3 months. It took 18 months. And I finally got it out, and I released it. And you had to have this SD card on your computer or laptop.
Because the program was so big.
The program was big, and you needed to download it from that to get it onto the phone. There was no app store for Windows Mobile.
Right.
And I think we sold, in the first 2 months, I think I sold 80 copies. And I thought, this is not working out. This reminds me of the old days.
Is that because there's so few birders?
No, the birders, so I got all these emails from people. I saw your little movies you made about Winged Explorer. It seems like a really cool idea. I don't have a Windows phone, but I have this new one called the Apple phone.
Oh, that was kind of an eye-opener.
And I went, Apple has a phone? I mean, I didn't even know about it.
2007, you didn't even know about the iPhone
I had heard a little bit, but I was like, no, and I'm so tired of doing this, I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah.
But those letters kept coming in.
Yeah.
This is a great idea. Put it on the iPhone. Put it on the iPhone. And I thought, well, I guess I should go see if there are any iPhone developers. Well, there weren't very many back then. This was and there was... And
there weren't any apps at first at all. It was all web apps.
Yeah, it wasn't
Remember
until...
that? Steve didn't want an app
Not
store.
until the end of 2007
Yeah.
did he open that store up. And then when I finally got around to thinking maybe I should go find a developer, there were 10,000 apps in the store. And I went, 10,000? That's way too many.
I can't compete.
How can I compete with 10,000 programs?
There's what, 2 million now?
And then there's 2 million. So I guess, at the time I thought 10,000 was a lot.
Well, not only that, the apps are all 99 cents, and that's not going to make a lot of sense. How much did you sell Winged Explorer for?
I sold it for $20.
Yeah.
And everybody said, you're making a huge mistake. And I went, you know what? If you go out and buy Peterson's book right now, you're going to spend $25.
Easily.
So here's something that's got 14 Peterson books on it.
Right.
And it fits in your pocket.
And it does other things, like you have the audio of the bird's song.
That's right.
Which is really valuable in identifying the bird, finding the bird. You can play some if we have it.
Can they get it on the screen?
Yeah, we can hear it. Yeah.
Can they see it?
So this is the app. This is the Android version of the app. Is that right?
This is
Or
the
this
iPhone.
iOS.
This
Okay.
is the iOS
It's
version.
iOS or Android now.
Yeah. So here's your 940 birds.
So there are roughly 1,000 species, you told me, in the continental United States, but you have 940.
940. And the 1,000 is kind of a fuzzy number because that's a lot of birds that have been seen once.
Yeah.
Because they got steered off course from Russia or something.
Right.
So, but this
Pretty
is the
much
most
anything you're going to see.
Yeah, and you can sort this different ways. Like this is alphabetical, just by their name. And if you saw some bird and you know what it is, I saw a goldfinch. You can just type in gold or something.
And it'll get you close.
It'll get you really close if you know how to spell. So there's the American goldfinch.
Yeah.
And then this is called the species account.
Oh,
This
that is beautiful.
basically-
Now, where'd you get the illustrations?
We had them painted.
This is like Audubon. These are gorgeous.
Yeah, no, these are artists that I hired from all over the world. And they're all in very high resolution, so you can blow them up.
Oh, that's neat.
And you can see all the
that's
detail.
important for identification, right? You're looking
Yeah.
for specific things.
You want to see all the detail, but you also want to see photos. So we have all the photos.
Oh, look at this.
And you also want to know the most important thing about identifying a bird is called the field marks. So when you turn this little button on, you see what's the important marks about them. Well, it's got a pink-orange bill. It's got a black cap. It's got a white rump with undertail.
Because you're
coverts.
using your spotting scope, and you're trying to figure out, is that a towhee or is that a goldfinch? What is
Exactly.
that I'm looking at?
And mostly you want to know, well, first of all, 940 birds, how do I know just the ones that are around me?
Yeah. Oh,
So the
that
way you
would
do
be
that is
useful.
with this app, and this is the iBird Ultimate app, our best app. You click here on search, and this is all the things you can search on and narrow it down by.
Oh, nice.
And you click on birds around me,
Oh, neat.
and you basically get a GPS map of where you are, and it says, oh, there's 299 birds around Leo's
There are
location
299 species in this area.
within this radius.
So I can get my life list going pretty quick here.
This is one of the richest areas for
Is it
birds
really?
in the nation. Yeah, there's this whole area, especially around Point Reyes, and it's just got so many different birds.
You might have a convert here. I have friends who are avid birders.
The chat room is telling you to be a birder. Those guys are all selling.
Well,
you to do
I'm
it.
just looking for excuses to travel, take pictures, and buy gear.
Buy some more cameras.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be the one.
That's all I'm looking for.
So these are the 299 birds.
But I like the nature part of it, right? Because you end up going out in nature and,
That's
and,
right.
and enjoying nature.
Communing.
I like hiking, but I kind of need a purpose. So this gives me a
And
purpose.
I think that's why it's such a popular hobby.
Yeah.
What other animal, insect can you think of that's magical, colorful, sings, flies?
Yeah.
And
The
there's
flies, I
and
know,
there's-
that's a big deal,
That's a
right?
big deal, and they all fly differently.
Yeah.
And some
really?
fly. Yeah. Some
they don't just all flap their
Oh
wings.
no, there's about 14 different ways birds can fly.
What?
Yeah. See, look at
Well,
this.
I know there's soaring. I've seen.
So you can search on how it flies. Look at this. Under flight, down here, you can pick
Wing-shaped flight pattern.
And look at this.
What?
There's dynamic soaring. There's flap and glide.
This is fun.
There's something called hawking.
Yeah, we have red tails here. Beautiful red tail hawks in this area.
They do static soaring.
And I look up and I see, and I'm trying to think, what is that? Is that a hawk? Is that a falcon? Is that a buzzard? Because we have all three in the area, right?
And that's easy to tell the difference because what you do is you go up here to shape, right here, and you pick hawk, and you just narrowed out of the 299 birds that are 25-mile radius, there are 18 hawks, and this is what they look like.
Oh, okay.
This is them.
Oh, this is
This is
so
them.
fun.
And if you want to see their bodies instead of their heads, you go to here and you hit this little button, and you switch to body, and now you're looking at their
This
bodies.
is neat.
Okay.
And you know what I like about this? You've made it fairly big controls, and I think this is because birders are doing this while they're holding their scope, while they're in the wild. They need to be able to do this with their thumb, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to be one-handed. So we
Yeah.
tried to make the whole interface one-handed.
It's very thoughtful. That's really interesting.
So here's a American kestrel, for example. And
Oh, look how beautiful that is.
to prove that this
It's
actually
so
is around you can hit this range button and you can see a range map. And green is all year round. So basically you can see that in our area right about here, we're
They're always
guaranteed to
here.
find a kestrel.
Yeah.
There's lots and lots
Yeah.
of them around. And you can see photos of them. males, females. So lots and lots of photos. And the most fun part is you can listen to their sound.
Oh, that's so cool.
And you can see a waveform.
All right,
amplitude.
I just bought the program. So now it's expensive for an iPhone program. I don't think it's that expensive.
Well, there's three.
Okay.
There's actually even more than three. But the three basic North American bird apps with 904, there's iBird Plus, which was our very first one. That's the one that Apple did the commercial
I think that's
on.
when we met because
Yes.
you were showing that at Macworld Expo. And
That's
I
right.
came up and said, this is neat. It was beautiful.
That's the one that Apple picked for their television commercial. We have an app for that. That was what really put us on the map.
Yeah, that helps. Yeah.
And then that's the good. And then we have better, which is iBird Pro.
Well, good, because that's the one I bought. That's $15.
That's $15. And then we have iBird
That's-
Ultimate.
You know, it's so funny because we got this mindset of 99 cents are free with in-app purchases. Thank you for not doing in-app purchase. You could easily say your first 20 birds are free, but what good is
There's
that?
so much pressure on me to do either
Don't
in-app
do that.
purchase or subscription model.
No, please. Yes.
You okay with subscriptions?
Well,
Because it's reoccurring income, and the thing about buying these apps is once you buy it, and I have this big debate with
you have
Steve
to
Jobs.
maintain this thing for 100 years.
Yeah, they get a lifetime subscription.
Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah.
And they're demanding. They're like,
You
well,
could
I bought
charge-
this 10
you
years
could charge
ago.
$20 a year, I think.
You do?
For a pro, sure. Right? I don't know. Birders seem like to me they spend a lot of money on this
They do
stuff.
spend a lot of money, but they're kind of become imbued to this idea that they're free forever.
Well,
So-
the app ecosystem is funny, and I think it's very challenging for developers, and I'm sure you're facing
I'm
this.
facing that.
Because Apple doesn't let you do demos. They don't, I mean, they take 30% of it anyway off the top, and in-app purchases and so forth.
and
it's
the
very
App Store
challenging.
itself is really, it's hard to
and
find
you can't
anything.
find anything. If you go and search for iBird, will you find it?
You'll find iBird, but if you type bird, you're going to get 100 Angry Bird games, and Flappy Bird games.
Yeah. Now, do you have an iPad version of this as
This
well?
app actually works on the iPad too,
Okay.
and it opens up full screen on the iPad.
Oh, it uses the real estate.
uses all the real
Nice.
estate. But we also have a specialized iPad app called Waite's Guide.
That's like a guide.
That's a
book.
native guide to it, and
Oh,
it's got
nice.
way more information than this.
Well, I noticed you had, and so $19.99 for iBird Ultimate, but then you have this pack of 3 apps for the same price, which is iBird Ultimate Birds of Hawaii, which I got. Even though I'm not in Hawaii, I want to go there, and it's an excuse, right? Honey, I bought the app. We got to go. And then the iBird Journal. So people who are birders keep life logs, right? They're trying to add
Serious
to their
birders
list.
have life lists, and they want to
Yeah.
see as many birds as they can in their life. And whenever they make an observation, they use something like iBird Journal to write down where they were, what they saw, when they saw it, and any notes about it, what sex it was.
So there's a standard for how these life lists are kept.
Yeah.
And then you
well,
can
it's
also
kind of
submit them. And
It's a fuzzy standard. I mean, some people just write it on the back of a napkin. But the real serious birders, they want to record every little detail. They want a map
Yeah.
where they can put a pin, and they can show you all the pins where all the
that's
birds
neat.
are.
And this does all that.
Yeah. And then there's
And
eBird.
What's eBird?
eBird is Cornell's database where people send their observations.
Okay.
So they can do this crowdsourcing
And this supports eBird
indirectly.
indirectly.
Journal supports it.
That's what I'm saying. I'm looking at iBird
Yeah,
Journal.
you can export it to eBird format.
So, and there's a forum. There's iBird
the forum's
Hub.
a great place. If you can't identify a bird, there's a couple thousand birders in there that will
Just
tell
take
you.
a picture of it.
Yeah, you just describe it, and they'll tell you
Yeah.
what it is.
Locations. So this is nice. So you can get your. My list is 0, and then will it sync so I have it backed up because I don't want to lose my.
Oh yeah, no, everything's backed up. It's right now. That's been a big controversy. We've gone from iCloud to Dropbox and back to iCloud.
Well, iCloud didn't work for a long time.
iCloud was horrible.
And really, I think end users didn't know this, but from the developer's point
It
of
was
view,
horrible.
It was a nightmare.
Just basically we gave it up. We switched to
Yeah.
Dropbox,
Yeah.
and then Dropbox did this nasty thing a year ago where they said, "Oh, you know that feature you're using to sync all your photos? Well, we're getting rid of it." So we were stuck. We're like, "Well, now what do we do?" So
That's
we
right. I
decided
remember they dropped that, yeah.
iCloud got a lot better. Their sync works a lot better. So we just are in the process of migrating everybody from
But you
Dropbox.
have multiple methods, including email. You could email yourself your list, so you really aren't at risk here. Export it to CSV, so you can import it to Cornell and other places. Dropbox support and iCloud support's coming back. So this is good.
Now, one thing about Ultimate that makes it different than Pro is the fact that it has this birds around me feature. But it has another feature that, I don't know, maybe this is too esoteric to talk about, but so you have this search, right, where you can say, just show me the hawks, and it says, okay, there's 40 matches.
Yeah.
So let's say you saw a hawk and you noticed it was a certain color.
Yeah.
So you picked, like, say, color prominent, all right? Now notice something. Why are these grayed out? See all these ones that are gray? The reason for that is because of the algorithm that we have called Percevia, which basically says, don't allow them to pick a parameter or value that will not narrow the search.
So if I pick prominent blue, well, that's just so common.
It's uncommon. There are no prominent blue hawks. There are no hawks that are prominent. You ever seen one?
No.
Okay. So it's only
There's no
showing
blue-eyed hawk?
Well,
No?
this is the body. This is the body.
Blue-tail hawk? No?
This is the body. So this
No.
is the prominent color.
No,
If
I'm
you
not
wanna
looking for boobies. I'm looking for hawks. So there's no point.
So if
I
you go
get
to
it.
primary color, there's a few more.
I get it.
Because this is like, it could have a primary and a secondary color.
it,
But,
got it.
and there are some that do have blue in them, like you could see here. But so basically, this algorithm means that you're not going to waste your time picking things that won't narrow the search. You don't get any you can't make a bad selection with this.
Nice.
That's what's cool about it. And we have a patent on this.
Really?
Yeah.
Neat.
It only took like 8 years, but we got it.
How long have you been doing the iBird?
Let's see, it'll be about 8 years.
8 years?
Yeah, 2008 was
And
when
it has become the preeminent birding
It's
app.
the go-to
It's
app,
the
I
one
think, for
everybody
birders.
uses.
It's the one everybody uses. I mean, there's a lot of competition right now. I mean, once the guys that write books, like the Petersons and the Sibleys,
They'll be
discovered,
doing this, of
they've been
course.
doing it.
Yeah.
No, they came out about 2 years after
But
me.
yours looks gorgeous. I really like this. What fun. All right, well, so what else do I need? What other gear? I'm going to get a spotting scope.
Get your
An
checkbook.
adapter for my camera so I can take pictures.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I should say, first of all, you really don't need anything.
No, you just go out. Binoculars,
I mean,
maybe.
a lot of birders don't even use binoculars. They just go out and they just write down a bird they saw, and
It's
then
an excuse to enjoy a hike.
it gives you a reason to be out there, you know. And it's fun to talk about what you
Yeah,
saw. But
yeah.
it gets very competitive. I mean, some people will say, well, what do you mean you saw like a turkey over there? There's no turkeys in that area.
Oh, just watch my big ear and you'll see how competitive it is. That was hysterical.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah.
Big ear.
Mitch, what fun this has been. I thank you so much. And you've been so generous.
Oh, the promo codes.
What about promo codes?
So anybody that has listened to this show
Yeah.
and sends an email to mitch@ibird.com
Okay.
and mentions Triangulation,
Okay.
I will send them a free promo code so they can download the app for free.
Android or iOS?
Just iOS, because they don't have promo codes yet for Android apps unless they have
Okay.
in-app purchases, which we haven't done.
Okay.
So just
this
iOS.
is iOS only.
iOS only.
Mitch@ibird.com.
Right.
And you will send them a promo code.
That's one way. Another way for people that are
Of course,
local.
I already bought it, so.
Sorry. What about your Android phone?
Well, I didn't. I have an Android. I should have it on Android too.
You should, yeah.
Okay.
There's more Android phones than iPhones, so you
No,
know,
and mostly I carry I'm carrying an iPhone today, but mostly I carry Android.
then you should download it for that too.
Okay, I'll get that for
Yeah.
that too. Can I ask you for a promo code? No, because you don't have it for Android.
I'd give you one if I had one. The other thing that I should mention is that for people that are local,
Yeah.
that would like to visit Wild Birds Unlimited and learn more about birding, it's a great store in the Novato Shopping Center, the one that has Costco in it.
Yeah.
What's that called?
Yeah. Yeah. I know what one you mean.
If they go in there and they mention Triangulation, they'll get a free promo code for iBird.
Oh, another way to do it.
Another way to do it. And a
Can
way
I
to-
go there and get all the gear and the hat? And
You can get everything there. And they will spend hours talking to you about what you need.
Harry Fuller will probably be in there when I go. He lives in the area, and he's a big birder. All right. I am excited. I am excited. A new hobby. I have many.
That's
This
exciting
one
for me to hear.
gives me something to do when I'm traveling and walking around, and I like to do both of those. So it's just one more fun thing to do. Mitchell,
Yeah, but
so
you
much
take
fun to have Mitch Waite here and bring all these great toys. And thank you for the promo code.
You're very welcome.
That's
you might,
very
you might get a
generous.
bird named after you.
Does that happen? Do you have a bird named after you?
I'm working on it.
What kind? I mean, every bird's been named.
It's going to be the bird that everybody sees. It's going to be called the Waite bird. So waits for you.
It's a good name, actually. That's a good name for a bird. If anybody wants to do that with an E on the end, though, don't forget the E. We do. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
What fun!
Thanks
this
for
has
having
been.
me.
Thank you
Been
so
fun.
much. If you want to watch Triangulation live, we love it if you do. As I said, you're a big part of the Triangle. Just join us every Monday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. You can be in the chat room at irc.twit.tv. We'd love it if you are. If you can't, don't worry. On-demand audio and video is always here on our website, twit.tv, but you can also get it in any of your favorite podcatching apps, of course, iTunes, on the podcast app on your phone, or download one of those great Twit apps. We have lots of third-party developers who've done a great job. In fact, there's even a link to all the apps on our website at twit.tv/apps. Get the app, Roku, Apple TV, your phone, subscribe, and get every episode. This is not, I mean, every episode has something great in it. So much fun. You learn so much. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. Make a bird sound. Sing me out.
Caw, caw, caw.
No, on your app.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You got an app for that. What's your favorite bird? What's your favorite singing bird?
I like the acorn woodpecker.
Can I hear it?
Yeah, but you might not like it. But I think you'll know why I like it. Sounds like a monkey.
What? It sounds like a monkey.
Here's another one that it makes. That's one vocalization. Here's another one. Jacob, Jacob, Jacob. That's how you know it's
That's what they say, Jacob. Jacob. Doesn't sound like
that's
Jacob.
what a birder would learn when he hears that sound. You say that's a Jacob, Jacob.
How many bird songs are in here?
This app has 2,600
What?
species, and each species has maybe between 2 and 10 vocalizations.
Holy cow.
So when you look at a bird like, say,
That's
the Acadian
fun.
flycatcher, and you look at the sounds, you see all these
Oh,
different
look,
sounds?
there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, and they have a name for each one. This is a very simple one.
So the Florida bird sounds different than the New York one?
Oh, yeah. So that's the other thing. Every bird has their
They
own...
have an accent.
They have their own
Hey,
accent. That's
I'm
right.
flying here. We'll see you next time on Triangulation. Bye-bye.
Yeah, no, the sparrows in the Mission sound different than sparrows in North Beach.
What?
Yeah, they have a little like Mexican...